What's going on, everyone? It is the Derv, and today I am bringing you kind of an altered way to use your Warlock to produce insane amounts of damage. This build is going to feature definitely not a new exotic piece of armor by any stretch of the imagination. Lots of creators have created builds around this, and you'll probably find lots of similarities. Or maybe you'll find something new with this build, but either way, this build is extremely easy to use, puts you in the center of DPS rotations, gives you an obscene amount of damage buff no matter what you are using, whether it's your weapon and or your super. You are going to win with this build. So if you've been looking for a new Prismatic Warlock build that centers around weapon damage and ability damage, this is the build for you guys. This one's a fun one. Let's go. Once again, we got another great build that can put out some serious damage. 12 million. That's not counting some of the downtime that I had either when I was trying to recover health or running for my life because my teammates were dead, or the couple of times that I was a little bit short on ammo from just spamming too much. But either way we go, we're going to talk about it. I'm going to show you guys how you can kind of make this your own depending on your play style and what kinds of things that you want to do with it. So first up on the list for this Prismatic Warlock, our super is going to be Storm Trance. Yes, I'm aware that Storm Trance is not as amazing as Chaos Reach. However, Storm Trance can still put out a serious amount of damage, and given the activities that we typically are finding ourselves in during the season, we're oftentimes going to be dealing with a lot of enemies in a small radius, which means that if you are using Storm Trance on a boss, chances are it's going to be chaining lightning to other enemies that are coming at you while you're trying to use it. So it's a win-win. The amount of tick damage, jolting shockwave, and the area effect that you can do to other enemies as you're taking out, harder type enemies and or bosses. For abilities, we are 100% going to be using our Healing Rift. The only substitute for this is going to be Empowering Rift. For this build specifically, do not put on Phoenix Dive. You need to have a Rift. I don't care what Rift you have, but the Healing Rift makes the most sense since it does grant you continuous healing. I prefer the Burst Glide. You can use whatever you want. We are going to be using our Arcane Needle as our melee of choice, and we are going to go with the Healing Grenade. The Healing Grenade is going to give us Restoration and Cure, which is going to be important once we go through our fragment selections. It is also important to note that it is not imperative that you use the Healing Grenade. You can put on theoretically whatever you want, but once we go through the fragments, I think the Healing Grenade is going to make the most sense, and it's got an incredibly low base cooldown compared to the others. For aspects, I recommend putting on the Hellion for number 1. Activate your class ability to summon a solar mortar that lobs flaming projectiles at distant targets. Targets damaged by the mortar are scorched. So the reason that I have this selected as opposed to Lightning Strike is when I'm casting my Rift, which is going to be as often as humanly possible, I don't really have an additional way to generate damage. You can make the argument, oh, well, Durf, you can put on the Lightning Surge and then you've got the melees. Well, that's great, but what am I going to get when I'm standing in a Rift other than just my weapon damage? Exactly nothing. So it makes more sense to have something that puts out additional tick damage, which is what I'm erring on as opposed to having to rely on my abilities more often, if that makes sense. Next up is going to be Feed the Void. Defeat any target with any ability to activate Devour. Your Devour effects are improved, restoring additional health and grenade energy. So either way we go, we're going to be gaining additional health and additional grenade energy, and because we're going to be in a Rift, that health is going to, of course, stack with that Rift. The fragments, first up on the list, is going to be Facet of Purpose. Picking up an Orb of Power grants either Bolt Charge, Restoration, Frost Armor, Woven Mail, or Overshield. So in this instance, we're going to be accumulating stacks of Bolt Charge. Once you get a stack of Bolt Charge, it grants you melee energy, so you're going to be able to spam your melee as often as possible, which will count towards proccing Devour, which is important if you're going to be stationary in a Rift to be able to pick off an enemy from a distance. Of course, the Arcane Needle will track to that enemy if you are relatively close to the aim of that enemy from a distance. Next up is going to be Facet of Balance. Rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants melee energy. Rapidly defeating targets with darkness damage grants grenade energy. Because this is going to be a light, heavy damage class build, we are going to be generating an obscene amount of melee energy, which means we're going to be able to spam our Arcane Needles from our stationary positions inside of our rifts quite often. We should never, ever be hurting for melee energy. Next up is going to be Facet Sacrifice. When you have an Arc, Solar, or Void buff, ability Final Blows grant bonus Darkness Transcendence energy. So we're going to theoretically be buffed at all times with things like Bolt Charge, Amplified, Cure, or Restoration, or Devour. So theoretically, we should have no shortage of the ability to generate Darkness Transcendence energy, which means when we proc Transcendence, all it's going to do is enhance our overall damage output. Next up is going to be Facet of Awakening. Rapidly defeating targets with light or darkness damage or super final blows. Generates an elemental pickup of the matching damage type. Plus 10 to resilience here, and because this is going to be an arc heavy build, we're going to be generating Ionic Traces. Ionic Traces give us ability energy back in general for every ability, so it's not really going to matter where we're lacking. We're going to get equal parts to all of them. Last but not least is going to be Facet of Hope. Now, Facet of Hope is kind of a niche fragment, if you will. So let me explain how we are going to use this. While you have an elemental buff, your class ability regenerates more quickly. So the main point here is that I want to regenerate my Rift as often as possible. To do that, I want to be able to generate an elemental buff as often as possible. One of the easiest things to do to generate the elemental buff is chuck your healing grenade at the ground. You chuck that healing grenade at the ground. It doesn't matter if you're using your Arcane Heal. It doesn't matter if Devour is procced, which it probably will be. It doesn't matter if you're amplified or you have Bolt Charge or anything. So you're going to double down. You're going to double down on the elemental buff that you have and get your class ability back as fast as possible. So while you're in a Rift, as you're using these different things, you're basically ticking down on the countdown for your next use of your class ability. So just think about in terms of what can I do to get my class ability back faster, and what is the easiest, almost dumbest thing I can do to get my class ability faster. Chuck your healing grenade at the ground and proc yourself. Every time that you give yourself an elemental buff, you win. You will get your class ability back faster, and that is the play of this build. For stat distribution, I'm recommending speccing into Resilience, Discipline, and Recovery in that order. You could make the argument Resilience, Recovery, and Discipline in that order of strength, but the Recovery is really not going to be as necessary to get to a T10, although if you have a Warlock that has a 10 in Recovery, this build is going to work even better for you because you're going to have an even more advanced cooldown for your class ability. But either way you go, spec into those three stat distributions that I mentioned, and then if you can, try to get your intellect and your strength to a T4, T5, T6 area. T4 and intellect is perfectly fine, as we're not necessarily relying on this super to be our main damage, which you'll be able to see and probably did already see in that little intro video. But the strength, you don't want that to be so low that it takes forever to generate, even though we're going to be generating a lot of light damage. So just kind of keep that in mind. Don't just completely ignore your three other stats just because I told you to focus on three, if that makes sense. For weapons, in the kinetic slot, I recommend the Multi-Mac or the Kvastov. The Kvastov is going to be the legendary version. The Multi-Mac, the reason that I recommend this is because of its ability to roll with attrition orbs and kinetic tremors. With that, as well as field tests of boosting your stability in those things as you're firing at weapons, you can pretty much print yourself orbs, and you can give yourself area damage with the kinetic weapon. You can't do that with the Kvastov, but what you can do instead is you can put on strategist and attrition orbs, and you can also have Dealer's Choice as your intrinsic perk for this weapon, which will reduce the cooldown of your super. Again, because we're not planning on spamming the super necessarily for damage, even though I guess you can with this build if you want to, you can still get it back quicker, still print yourself orbs of power, and with strategist, you can get your class ability back even quicker. So whichever one of these two that you have that you can pull out and use, I would highly, highly, highly recommend. If nothing else, make sure that you use a kinetic weapon. Do not use a strand or a stasis weapon. In the energy slot, we're going to be rolling with the Guardian Games Trace Rifle. This one has got dynamic sway reduction and jolting feedback. The main thing you want to have with your special ammo arc weapon is that it has jolting feedback. So whatever that weapon might be, if you have a special ammo arc weapon that has jolting feedback attached to it, or just an arc weapon in general that has jolting feedback attached to it, that is going to take precedence over literally any other kind of arc weapon out there. I'm talking about Volshot. I'm talking, it doesn't really matter what the weapon is. You want jolting feedback. If you have this trace rifle and you have jolting feedback as a perk on it, use it. I promise you it's going to work best for what our goal is. In the heavy slot, we have, of course, none other than Thunderlord. Final blows generate lightning strikes and grant stacks of bolt charge, strong against overload champions. You don't care about the stunning capability of overload champions, but what does the overload champion stunning capability weapon have? It has the ability to exhaust a target, which means as you're firing at your target, which is hopefully the boss, the damage output from the boss is going to be less than if you weren't firing at it with an overload stunning capable weapon, such as Thunderlord. For your helmet, go ahead and put on Heavy Ammo Finder and Special Ammo Finder. You want to put on a Harmonic Siphon because we're going to be using our special ammo weapon as our main ad clear. We're only going to buzz out our kinetic weapon when we absolutely need to print ourselves some orbs of power and or fish for special ammo. For the general mod, put on whatever you need. I only needed a +5 to get to the next tier of my strength, but you can put on whatever you need, as if you set it up this way, you're going to have up to 3 energy available for your general mod. For our gauntlets, go ahead and put on whatever general armor mod that you need. I only needed a +5 in recovery to get myself to that T7. Go ahead and put on heavy-handed so you can occasionally spawn an orb of power with your melee. And on top of that, put on 2 focusing strikes. It grants class ability energy when you cause damage with a powered melee attack. Because we're not spiking into the grenade, it gives us the ability to use our 3 charged melee strikes, our Arcane Needle, to give us not only a orb of power every 10 seconds, but also give us the ability to reduce our cooldown for our class ability, which is going to be pivotal in the next armor segment. Sanguine Alchemy, the exotic chest armor. Certainly nothing I'm going to go over is going to be, absolutely groundbreaking. There are certainly other content creators out there that have made builds surrounding Sanguine Alchemy, so you might see something similar in my video or their video or whatever. This piece of exotic armor is very useful in a number of different situations, and there's only so many exotics out there that you can theoretically pair with this that might benefit immensely from it. I'm sure you'll find another video out there at some point that has Thunderlord, Queensbreaker, or whatever exotic heavy weapon you can think of, and or maybe special ammo weapon. It just really depends. But either way, Sanguine's Alchemy, let's talk about it really quick. Blood magic. While standing in any rift, damaging a target will mark it. You deal extra damage to marked targets and gain additional bonus damage with weapons that have a damage type matching your equipped super. Weapon final blows while standing in any rift pause the rift's countdown, extending its duration. So our main goal is going to be casting our rift as often as possible. When we cast our rift, that's when we're going to pull out our heavy weapon and just lay waste to whatever boss or champ is in front of us. While we do that, we're going to get intrinsically built weapon surges. I believe the standard is ×2 for a healing rift and ×3, if I'm not mistaken, for the empowering rift. So there's not going to be that much of a difference in the grand scheme of things. I mean, if you're not going to solo one phase a boss with your build in your healing rift, chances are you're probably not going to solo one phase a boss with your empowering rift. So why take the extra risk of possibly dying by not getting healing put back into your character? Just use your healing rift, because it all functions the same. It's all still 1 minute and 20 some seconds cooldown time anyways. And again, we've already gone over kind of how we're going to reduce that without doing much other than what we normally do with our character anyways. But on top of that, you're going to be able to pause the rift if you get a kill with the weapon that you're using while you're in this rift. So thinking of things such as grenade launchers, rocket launchers, or of course, Thunderlord. Thunderlord, as you know, creates lightning strikes as it's being used. So if there happens to be another enemy passing through the wayside of the boss as you're firing at them and you kill that, guess what that does? It stops the rift cooldown, which means as you're still firing at the boss, and again, you haven't taken your eyes off the boss or the weapon, you are continuing the carnage while also pausing your rift at the same time. So it is a little bit based on chance, but the crux of the matter is as long as you're in that rift, you get bonus damage. And you get additional bonus damage with weapons that have a damage type matching your equipped super. So yes, I understand that Storm Trance is not ideal for DPS. However, you can still use it intermittently while taking advantage of your heavy weapon in general. So what I typically like to do is I will use my super either in an emergency or when I run out of my heavy ammo. Because it's still going to do more than any special ammo out there, with maybe the exception of Still Hunt, if it hasn't been completely nerfed into the ground. But again, you wouldn't use that for this build anyways. Or possibly Izagi's Burden. I don't know. There's really not much out there that I think is going to out DPS Storm Trance that isn't something that's as powerful as, say, like a Microcosm, a Queen's Break, or Thunderlord. There's not a whole lot because Storm Trance, of course, lasts long enough that you can do enough tick damage, and of course the jolt that you inflict when you initially cast it adds to it and pairs with the artifact. So either way, I don't think you can really go wrong, and the numbers speak for themselves on the intro video. 12 million damage is 12 million damage. I don't care who you are. If you do 12 million damage in a Court of Blades, you're doing pretty good. Yes, people can do more. Yes, people certainly have done less. But either way, you get yourself over 10 million. That's a good run for you. I mean, the average player doing 10 million damage, every Court of Blades they ever run is going to be super easy if every single person in your fire team does 10 million damage. And as you and I both know, all of us watching or, watching our allies do their thing and then seeing the numbers afterwards, not everyone gets to 10 million all the time. So the fact that you potentially can with this build means this build is working for you. As far as the mods go, put on whatever general armor mod that you need. This is the spot in which I would recommend putting on a 4 energy slot. Go ahead and put on 2 damage resistances and use your Harmonic Reserve mod. The reason why I'm telling you to put on Harmonic Reserve is we are going to be using our energy weapon as our main ad clear weapon. So the idea here is that as you are debuffing targets and getting your ability energy back through your ionic traces and all those things, you're getting your class ability generated even faster. So yes, you can run around with your kinetic weapon and print orbs of power and generate it that way, or you can use your energy weapon, print ionic traces, and get it back even faster. Once you run out of that, you can switch over to your kinetic weapon. Or if you want to just use your kinetic weapon, you can swap over to the special ammo weapon once your heavy ammo runs out. But generally speaking, there's not too many damage phases that last long enough for your heavy ammo to run out. They just don't. Something always happens. Either something gets triggered, or you have to end up running for cover because the heat gets too hot, or whatever. So that's just one way that you can use it. But as long as you have that rift down, every weapon that you use has bonus damage. So use your Thunderlord first and foremost. For the leg armor, I recommend putting on Absolution and Double Insulation. Now, you don't have to have Double Insulation. You can certainly swap that out with Recuperation. You can also swap that out with Invigoration or Innervation, whichever one that you want to do. This is also a good time to put on a 4 energy mod, armor mod if you need to. I needed to get up to that T7, so I put my recovery on. With what I have right here, you're going to be able to proc your class ability as often as possible. And your cooldown essentially is going to be, every 30 seconds, maybe. If you're picking up orbs of power, it's going to be even quicker. It really is that simple. And yes, I know it's 1 minute and 20 some seconds base cooldown, but everything that we've gone over so far is going to reduce the cooldown of your class ability. So it's a win-win for you in the end. Last but not least is going to be the class item. Number 1 on the list is going to be putting on Font of Restoration. With 1 orb of power picked up, I'm going to turn my T7 recovery into a T10 recovery. It is plus 35 to your base stat. So do the math. Plus 35, 71, I'm at 100. So you literally can't get any better than that when you pick up that orb of power, you get your class ability back literally as fast as humanly possible. Because we're going to be running with our class ability so often and so frequently used to do what we got to do, Go ahead and put on Reaper. Shortly after using your class ability, your next weapon final blow spawns an Orb of Power. Put on Bomber so you can get your grenade back, which means you can proc your buffs as much as possible. And then whatever general armor mods that you need and your artifice armor mod that you need will fit the build here. Now, some of you might ask, well, Durf, why don't I put on distribution? Reduce all ability cooldowns when using your class ability near targets. I don't really care about that because I've got everything else accounted for in the rest of my armor. So just put on your Bomber and just put on your Reaper and put on your Font of Restoration and call it a day. So for the artifact, we're going to go through exactly what you see on the screen. First up is going to be Overload Trace Rifles, Piercing Sidearms, and Overload Machine Guns. Yes, I understand we've got the same champ twice with double Overload Machine Guns, but given the fact that most people are running Court of Blades regularly, you can afford it. There's other things that you can do to account for the other two champs. I've made videos talking about other weapons that can take care of that. But if you know why I have Piercing Sidearms on, then you probably can already figure it out. In the second column, we've got Beam, Medic, Rapid Trace Rifle, Final Blows heal you and nearby allies. Powerful combatants increase the amount. This is a no-brainer since we're going to be using our Special Ammo Trace Rifle to do the bulk of our ad clear. Vile Weave, tangles or targets hit by your tangles are severed. Reduce tangle cooldown by picking up one. Because we're going to be using our Arcane Needle, this is the only reason I have Vile Weave on. I want to be able to sever a target and deal additional damage to them. Elemental Siphon is number 3 on this list of probably most important. First up is going to be the Trace Rifle and the Machine Gun. This is going to be the number 3 most important thing in here. Elemental Siphon, rapid final blows with a kinetic weapon or weapon matching your equipped super, creates an elemental pickup that matches your equipped super. So in this case, it's Ionic Traces. So yes, you can generate Ionic Traces with your kinetic damage weapon and your arc damage weapon. So you can, double dip the chips, so to speak. And when you boost this, the elemental pickup grants you matching super energy when they're collected. So yes, you can use this to get your super energy back faster, but no, because the roaming super, I don't necessarily think you have to boost this, but it does pair with Dielectric. Defeating arc debuff targets grants bolt charge. Rapidly defeating arc debuff targets grants an orb of power and heals a small portion of health. Flashover, when you gain maximum bolt charge, you also become amplified. Lightning bolts deal more damage. You're going to be amplified all the time, so it's probably not necessary. This is not life or death if for some reason you can't put Flashover on, but I don't know why you wouldn't be able to, so just put it on. Harsh Refraction, we're going to be taking huge advantage of this. Trace Rifles do more damage to targets afflicted by elemental debuffs matching their element type. So if you're running Court of Blades, for example, or like a Master Nightfall, or maybe a Legend, or not Legend, Expert or Master Sector, your Trace Rifle is going to have enough time on a target to proc a debuff, which means that if you keep firing at that debuff target, you're going to deal additional damage to that target. That's going to pair with everything else that we've gotten so far and also make you more powerful. Gold from Lead is a no-brainer. Picking up special ammo has the chance to grant heavy ammo. Because I'm going to be using my special ammo weapon very frequently, the few times I'm going to need to pick up the special ammo to replenish, I should hopefully get a few rounds into my heavy slot as well, and believe me, you're going to need them. Last but not least is going to be Limit Break. Casting a super while you are critically wounded or have an elemental buff matching your super element grants a period of increased super damage. So, because we're going to always be amplified, that Storm Chance that I was talking about that's not as powerful as Chaos Reach is going to have additional damage simply because we're going to be amplified pretty much any time that we cast it. If you're not amplified when you're casting the super, you might be doing something wrong. That's not to say you have no skill. I'm just saying you should theoretically be amplified at all times with this super as your super choice. And last but not least, Elemental Supercharger. Defeating exhausted or severed targets with weapons that match your super element grants super energy. Now, this one might be debatable. Unlike in Hunter for like Gathering Storm and unlike for Chaos Reach, getting your super back quicker isn't really necessary. You should be doing enough damage between most of your ad clear to get your super back in about a minute or two, unless you're just plain scared. So you theoretically could switch Elemental Supercharger out for Heavy Ordnance Regeneration. Dealing sustained damage to targets with heavy machine gun or rocket launcher grants damage resistance and increases grenade and melee regeneration for a short duration. If you do find yourself using your super more often, go ahead and put on Elemental Supercharger. I did do 2 runs with this build, which is why my second run was with Elemental Supercharger. That's why it was on just now. And the heavy ordnance regeneration just worked better. Keep in mind, your grenade and melee coming back. As you use your grenade and melee, guess what's going to be cooled down even faster? You guessed it, your class ability, which means you can deal even more damage with your class ability procced, as well as your weapon being firing from inside that rift. So go ahead and take advantage of heavy ordnance regeneration. You probably don't need defibrillating blast, and you probably don't need elemental supercharger unless you absolutely want it. But the limit break is going to help you help you feel that's like Storm Trance is actually carrying a little bit more weight than what you might be used to. So that is the build. Certainly you can debate me on do I have the right weapons for this? Are there other options? Hey, Durf, I saw this person use this very, very similar build to what you've got. You know, why aren't you doing this? Or why are you doing this when they're doing this? Or, hey, you're doing the same thing as this other person doing. Yes, I get it. There's not a lot of different options you can put, say for like the heavy weapon or for the energy weapon. You want jolting feedback. You want something that can do a ridiculous amount of damage in a very short amount of time. That's not going to really change between whatever options you pick for these two. The multi-mac and the Kvastov or whatever you have in the kinetic slot, that's probably going to be personal preference. But Sanguine's Alchemy is not really, it's not like a groundbreaking, just released exotic piece of armor that no one's ever heard about and no content creators ever touched on before. There's plenty of videos out there. Go ahead and search Sanguine Alchemy build. There's a bunch of them. So nothing that I'm going over is really brand new information. It's just kind of put in a style that I use, that I really like. Hopefully it resonates with some of you, or maybe you guys are already familiar with this, exotic armor and can make it your own. But either way, one of the reasons I think you should try this build is it's kind of a different play style. You get to kind of just sit back and let your weapons do the work for you and get some free buffs on top of it. You get your super energy back really quick. You get the ability to print additional damage without really having to make sure that your super is activated at the exact right time, which, if you're a raider, you know that every once in a while you do activate your super and it just doesn't do what you want it to do because it's not quite the right time to do it, but you want to get out there because you want it to be higher up on the DPS charts. This kind of eliminates it. Everyone is always firing at the boss all the time with their weapons anyways. So this eliminates the need, theoretically, for you to have to rely as heavily on your super for all the damage that you generate. This does, however, mean that you have a good aim. If you don't have a good aim, well, first of all, it's not hard to aim with either of those, weapons. But if you don't have very good aim, this build might not be the greatest for you. But one of the things that this build does do is give you a ridiculous amount of survivability with a class such as Prismatic that, yes, it does have a lot of survivability in it, but using the arc as a super and using Facet of Purpose isn't known for giving you a bunch of health back anyways, and this is an additional way if you were to take this into a higher end style content to stay alive even in the most hairy of situations, because theoretically you should be in a rift very often. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I think you should at least try this build or try a variation of this build. Maybe another content creator's got something that you're like, you know what? I like the way that sounds better than what Durf's saying. Or maybe you like the way that Durf is saying something better than this other person. It doesn't matter. Sanguine Alchemy is, it's very easy to use, very user-friendly. And as you get used to standing in your rift, you suddenly get a little bit braver when you are surrounded by enemies because you realize you can stay alive longer, which means you can deal more damage longer. So that's just something to think about. Anyways, I know I rambled a lot with this, but if you guys did find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a guardian out there who could benefit from a video like this, go ahead and share that with them. My goal is to help as many people as possible. Also, if you guys are looking for a non-toxic gaming community, my Discord is slowly but surely growing. We've got a lot of great people in there. I see people asking for help virtually every day. Someone's always available to help, or at least, communicating, hey, I can help you this day or whatever. And they're setting up times to try to get things done in the game. So if you've been part of toxic communities before, or maybe you're a solo player who's never really had, a go-to for, hey, I might need someone for this, or it'd be a lot easier if I had some help with this, feel free. I'll put a next to the dim link that I have for the build, I'll have a Discord link as well. Feel free to hop in. You know, the more people that can help people, the better the community is going to get anyways. So I'm sure no matter the skill set, you guys can always help others, as well as the people that are in there helping others. And of course, you guys are going to see me in there bouncing ideas off you guys and occasionally gaming with everyone in my Discord as well. So either way, so shout out to my Discord for making the community what it is, because there are a lot of great people in there, and I can't stress that enough. You know, certainly if you guys have clans, you know what I'm talking about. It's hard to get into a clan that's got, you know, good community vibes. But either way, I digress. All right, well, I'm going to switch over and just show a couple more things in this next highlight video, but you guys get the idea. Sanguine's Alchemy, Thunderlord. Of course, you can switch that out with, you know, virtually any heavy weapon of choice and any element of choice if you really wanted to, but this build absolutely does slap. Is it GM quality? Well, I'll let you guys be the judge of that. I think it can hang in a GM, but you're going to have to mod it for champs. But either way, I'm going to roll the clip. Let's go. So as you can imagine, there's a variety of situations in which a build like this will function well. As you can see here, because of the area damage that you can do with Thunderlord when you're going against multiple bosses, you get additional tick damage. I mean, thousands are just proccing just from firing one weapon. Then when you get into a situation like this, when you're standing in a healing rift and you're taking additional damage and you're surrounded and you have to divert your damage to other targets to try to slow down the potential death you might be facing, you have enough ammo regenerating from your Thunderlord in general, as well as your continued tick damage with your Hellion, as well as the constant healing that prevented me from dying in this situation. You end up winning. The other benefit from taking on Storm Trance is when you get into a situation where there's dual or trio bosses like this, you can cast your Storm Trance, deal damage to all of them, and take them all out with relative ease. But either way, I think Thunderlord is one of the best options for this build. You can make arguments for other heavy exotic weapons and special ammo weapons, but without the two deaths that I had, I mean, who knows where I could have actually been with this. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.